Masaki Kurosaki, ladies and gentlemen, the mother of Ichigo, the last Quincy in the Kurosaki bloodline. Today's video is going to be about her. Except for, you know, obvious reasons I couldn't come up with a lot of stuff to talk about regarding Misaki that I haven't covered already, you know, because of the little issue that she's dead. Now, I know what you're thinking right about now. It's like, well, of course, Tekking, she's dead. I mean, half of the main cast in this series is technically dead when you factor in the Soul Society and Hueco Mundo and everything. But, no, you don't get it. She's totally dead. Yeah, unfortunately, it all comes down to basic science at the end of the day. You see, when you have an evil spirit known as a hollow consume a good soul known as a plus, that soul kind of just gets devoured into the bowels of the hollow, and I don't think gets a chance to go to the Soul Society. It's actually kind of a sad story at the end of the day, because I think even after the hollow has been purified by a Shinigami, I don't think the soul gets to go to the Soul Society. I think it pretty much got digested by the hollow and it's gone forever. Quincy's especially, because unlike normal souls and normal humans, Quincy's don't have a natural kind of immunization to hollows. Allow me to explain a little bit, because we just found out about this in the last arc. Alright, so Quincy's really hate hollows. That's pretty much common. They dedicate their entire existence to fighting against hollows. But that's kind of odd when you really think about it. Why one particular set of humans would just have this unyielding hatred and fear for hollows. I mean, they're kind of demons. I mean, not really demons, but I can see how in human folklore they can be seen as demons. So in that case, I can understand why you would, you know, fear them, but Quincy's absolutely hate them. And the reason Mayuri came up for this hatred was it's not the same kind of hatred that comes from, you know, another ideology or another culture. You know, hollows don't have free will. They're just mindless creatures that devour everything in sight. Yeah, a few of them will gain intelligence if they get longer down the line, but most of the hollows that appear in the world living are just these mindless creatures that will eat anything that enters their field of vision. So it doesn't really make much sense to hate them. You know, fearing is another thing. So the theory goes that Quincy's don't have a natural defense against hollows. Just being in the presence of a hollow would be enough for the soul of a Quincy to begin to rot and decay into nothingness. So even if Misaki was a normal human and her soul was devoured by Grand Fisher, that would be enough to kind of let it go away forever and not travel to the Soul Society, and that's the reason we haven't seen her since. But she was a Quincy, so that kind of just makes her double dead. Double dead. Yeah. Okay, that's probably the last time I'm gonna do that. Probably. Okay, so discussing a little bit about her backstory. From what we gathered from the last arc of the series, we had a little mini arc referred to as Anything But the Rain. It was covered mostly in Volume 59 and Volume 60, from chapters 528 to 537. Just basically covering what Masaki's life was like before she met Isshin. Really, this was the big revelation that we got, that she was a Quincy to begin with. It was hinted at earlier than that, but this is the one big bombshell we got, which kind of tied Ichigo into everything that was going on in the last arc with Yuha, and is still continuing up to the recent chapters. You know, Ichigo having Quincy blood is still a very big deal, and we don't know where it's going to go from, you know, next chapter. It's anybody's guess. So Misaki was the last member of the Kurosaki family that was a pure Quincy, and this was kind of a problematic period for Quincy's because they were beginning to die out. There really wasn't a lot of them left. I really don't know why that was. I think it might have had something to do with Mayuri genociding over 2,000 of them. That might account for why the Quincy numbers were down in the census of the 1980s, which, hey, by logic, the Bleach series takes place in the early 2000s. This was like 20 years prior to that, so Bleach in the 80s. So therefore, Misaki was sent to live with the Ishida family, where she was basically set up in an arranged marriage to marry Ryukin Ishida, the eldest son of that family, to keep the Quincy bloodline strong. You gotta keep it pure. And if you're a history buff like me and you look back at past kings in certain areas like Austria, the idea of having pure bloodlines isn't usually what you think it is. It's usually incest. I mean, not in this situation, but it's usually incest. Masaki's exact feelings toward Ryukin, whether she was against the marriage or not, it wasn't really that apparent. She might have not wanted it, because she was kind of getting it forced upon her, but it didn't seem like she was really against it. There's even one or two scenes where she's kind of flirting with Ryukin, so, you know, I don't think she was really against it. She was probably just about thrust into all this. I mean, she was still like 15, 16 years old when this was going on. She was still in high school, and she's being moved to another household to marry this guy she really never met before, just to continue continue on the Quincy bloodline, which was very obvious she didn't really care much about. I mean, she was slacking on her holy training. It seemed very clear that she just wanted to have a normal kind of life as a teenage girl. She didn't really care much for the holy training or anything like that. But essentially what I'm trying to get across here is this is the story of about how Masaki's life got flipped, turned upside down. When she met a Shinigami, his name was Isshin. She got attacked by a hollow and she almost died. I'm gonna work on that song, but I think the key components are there. Okay, so about this time, on dark, stormy nights in Karakura Town, a mysterious hollow appeared and pretty much slaughtered any Shinigami that was on patrol duty. This hollow was known as White, or Shiro, and was one of the experiments of Sosuke Aizen. We don't really know the full story behind Shiro, although Aizen does mention that it was created from a Shinigami's soul. I would kind of like to know which Shinigami that was, actually, because this hollow, Shiro, is like the genesis for a lot of shit that happens in this series. Like, if it wasn't for this fucking thing, Ichigo wouldn't even have hollow powers to begin with, so what Shinigami are we talking about here? So the then captain of the 10th Division, Isshin Chiba, found out about these incidences of the hollow killing all these Shinigami, and he headed out to Karakura Town against the Soul Society's orders. Well, he didn't really get orders, he just kind of left. And he went to go see what was up about it, and he began fighting against Shiro. At first it seemed like he got the upper hand, but Aizen intervened because, you know, he's Aizen, bitch! And he managed to injure Isshin, so the fight began to get shifted, and he got critically injured in the process. This is when Masaki showed up on the scene, and with a combination of her Blute Vein, which she was especially gifted at using, her defensive techniques, she managed to take Shiro off guard and blasted a fucking arrow right through its head at point blank range, killing the son of a bitch.
You're terminated, fucker.
The funny thing is, these are all just pop cultural trends in the United States in the 1980s, because I have no idea what Japan was like in the 1980s. However, there were some major ramifications after she fought against Shiro, because as I said previously, Quincy's don't have a natural defense against hollow attacks. Even though she used her Blute Vein to protect against physical injury, her soul still got scarred and damaged by Shiro's attack, injecting essentially its essence into her soul, so Shiro began to live on, even though its physical body self-destructed, and a hollow hole began to be formed in Masaki's chest. Ryukin tries to take her and get her help somewhere. He was, I think, trying to go see his father, but we don't get to see Soken anywhere in the flashback, so that's kind of weird that we didn't get to see him at all. I think he was off somewhere training at the fifth field or something, but while he was en route to that place trying to find Soken, he meets up with Isshin and then Uehara, and of course Uehara knows everything about holification because, you know, he kind of fucked everything up with inventing the Hogyoku, whatever. And so he offers to help Isshin and Ryukin heal Masaki. Well, the best way he can heal her. He explains that she'll never go back to the way she was because of the lack of immunity. Her soul's now been permanently damaged and imprinted by Shiro, and this is a process that eventually leads to something called soul suicide, which eventually means that the soul is just going to kill itself and Misaki in the process. This is actually really cool because the process is similar to how certain cells have a specific chemical inside of them, so whenever the cell gets damaged or infected with something, the cell can basically release a suicide pill. Now, fortunately, Uehara did invent a cure for this soul suicide. Basically, out of the light arrows of the Quincy's, he created just like a normal like serum that can be injected into the Quincy's, and that'll prevent soul suicide. However, that'll only prevent soul suicide, not holification. This is what happened back with Shinji and the Visor group. He managed to prevent it so they wouldn't die, but they still became Visors. And for Masaki, who's a Quincy, that she can't even do the holification thing, so she still would probably die even if you prevented soul suicide. The hollow would probably rip her out from, you know, the inside out. However, Uehara does have a method to combat this, though it required Isshin to go into a personally made Gigai, have all the Shinigami powers removed from him, and basically be tied directly to Misaki in order to basically suppress the hollow inside her, and he would have to do this for the rest of her days. And Ryukin's a little bit, you know, iffy about this because, like, you know, Isshin just met Misaki. There's no reason for him to do this. There's nothing in it for him. But Isshin is the stand-up guy that we all know and love, so he, of course, accepted it because, hey, Misaki saved his life, and he would never be able to live that down the rest of his life if he just let her die when there was something he could have done to save her, even though it meant him losing his Shinigami powers, him abandoning everybody he ever knew in the Soul Society, possibly damaging the Shiba House in the process, and possibly never even becoming a Shinigami again. So Isshin binds himself to Masaki's soul. We get this really cool scene where it's like she's falling into this black abyss as she's about to be swallowed up by the hollow inside of her, and then all of a sudden Isshin shows up like the knight in shining armor and grabs her and cuts apart Shiro and vows to protect her until the end of his days. This was a really emotional scene. I really loved it. Kubo really hit the end on the titties. Nail on the head there, and I'm glad that Isshin did the right thing at the end of the day. Misaki titties. Bare unedited, right there. You can see the nipple. Weekly Shonen Jump release. I'm amazed that got passed. Amazed that got passed! To this day, I'm still afraid of showing that image uncensored on my YouTube channel. The fuck, Kubo? Were you just like, yeah, this is a really emotional story about Misaki and her past, but, I need to, you know, just a little bit, you know, just... He's like, okay, anyway, continuing on. And the rest of the story is pretty much just a bunch of home movies. Isshin and Misaki begin to date while in the world of the living. Isshin gets the Kurosaki clinic all set up. They eventually get married. Isshin takes her family name. So, way to go, Misaki, living on the feminist dream. Before you got eaten by a gerbil hollow, and you know you died. You died, Misaki. She gives birth to Ichigo. A few years later, she gives birth to Yuzu and Karin, and life is like a picture frame family for a while. Until Yuha decided to fuck it all up. He has a pretty good job at doing that recently. So the whole shtick with the Kaiser of the Quincy Empire, Yuha Bach, is that it will take 900 years to reclaim his lost body, 90 years to reclaim his lost intelligence, and 9 years to reclaim his lost power, which just happened to be the exact time that Ichigo and Misaki are on a nice little mother-son walk home from the karate dojo. Couldn't have picked a better fucking time to pull that off, couldn't you, Yuha? He used his holy selection abilities to rip the Quincy powers out of all the impure Quincy's. Now, as I said, Misaki was a pure Quincy originally, but ever since she got attacked by a hollow, she basically became an Ect or impure Quincy, and that's why that's why the whole marriage with Ryukin kind of fell through. Now, even though she had her power taken away from him, that doesn't necessarily mean she would have died right there. Kane Katagiri, Uryu's mother and Ryukin's eventual wife, ended up getting knocked into a coma after her power was taken away from her, but she was rather weak-willed, so that's what she ended up dying from. However, Misaki might have survived it. However, the trauma and the severity of having the powers like ripped out of her all of a sudden managed her to, she collapsed and she lost consciousness, and this was right when Grand Fisher showed up. Now, Grand Fisher honestly probably would have been able to be dispatched by Misaki quite easily because she was pretty skilled at her Quincy techniques, but as she was unconscious, not really much she could do, and that's how Grand Fisher ended up killing her. So kind of a cheap victory on Grand Fisher's part. Not really. It was the reason Misaki died, and was the reason that Misaki's not in the Soul Society right now, but the overarching, issue here is that it was Yuha that led to her death, and that's what Ichigo gets, Isshin tells him this during the flashback arc, Everything But the Rain, and that's what Ichigo's main drive, honestly, for defeating Yuha would be. I mean, yeah, Yuha's a pretty evil dude, kind of killed God, took over the entire Soul Society, and perverted their holy ground, but I could see Ichigo taking it personally from actually killing his mother. Honestly, even though it seems very unlikely, I hope that we get one thing with Misaki remaining in the series. I don't know how that's gonna work, because like I said, she's not in the Soul Society or anything like that. My theory was, in the last chapter we got, Yuha began to extract the Quincy powers from Ichigo, and we got to see like the pattern on Ichigo's face as the Quincy powers begin to get ripped out, which take the form of Old Man Zangetsu. Now, we could pull a thing where it's like, Yuha's inner world is like the amalgam of all the Quincy powers he absorbed in the past, including Misaki's and Katagiri's. So wouldn't it be possible, maybe, that when Ichigo gets his, soul ripped out or Quincy powers ripped out by Yuha, we don't really know what he's going to do yet, he ends up in this world and meets Misaki. I mean, that's my theory, but I'd like to see her, it would be kind of cool to see Misaki and Ichigo exchanging dialogue, mother to son, after Ichigo's all grown up now. I know what you're saying, I think, I'm kind of ripping off Naruto with the whole Kushina Naruto thing, but that's one of my favorite scenes in Naruto, so I'd be fine with it happening here. I wouldn't even be mad that it was ripping it off. I'd be cool with it 100%. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video, the recap on Misaki. What do you guys think's going to happen in the future with her, if anything at all? She's probably going to be mentioned in some relevant way, especially that Isshin's now arrived on the scene, so, that might have something to do with there. Actually, honestly, more than Ichigo fighting against Yuha, because we all know how that turned out, I would love to see Isshin fighting Yuha. Holy shit. That wouldn't be intense. That would be fucking extreme. So hopefully that'll go down, and even if Isshin might end up dying at the end of it, we would still get a pretty damn emotional fight there. We would see Isshin more pissed off than we've ever before, and when Isshin gets pissed, it's gonna be crazy. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. This will be Tekking101 signing out!